Another popular local rock band back in the late 60s and early 70s was a group called the Jets. The Jets were young and highly talented artists who developed a strong following throughout the Midwest. They recorded a golden voice, and they had records that climbed to number 13 on the top 40 radio charts. Mike Eisenberg, Grant Walker, Greg Clemens, and drummer Greg Wilson all started in Pekin, and all but the drummer made music a lifetime career.
I had known about Golden Voice Studio for a while before we actually went there to record. And I knew about bands like Suburban 9 to 5 and the Shags and Abaddon and all these other bands that had made 45s and stuff. So I knew about the studio, but we didn't actually book a date there until November of 1972. And I really didn't know of any other real, genuine recording studios other than Golden Voice. And all of the musicians around that had heard about Golden Voice had heard nothing but, great things about it, that it was a really, really great studio. So that was naturally our first choice when we decided to actually go in and do a recording. My first impression of being at Golden Voice Studios to record was that, first of all, when we came in and we saw the studio and all the gear and everything and the mixing console and Jerry showed us around and we were just in awe. I mean, just flat out in awe. And my thought was, finally, we're going to hear what we really sound like on a real recording.
The high that we got from hearing ourselves in headphones, the whole band together for the first time, was just like somebody just flicked a light bulb on us, like, boosh, and we could hear ourselves play. And you can hear that in the performance because we're excited, and it's got that that excitement that you only get once.
Young artists of today often look at recording in the early days as a handicap when compared to current digital technologies and the opportunities available. When paralleling old recording techniques with new, Michael Eisenberg has a well-defined view on the subject. He states, most recordings and performances of today are highly computer-controlled and often dependent upon sophisticated editing capabilities to correct performance weaknesses. In addition, mediocre talent can be enhanced above actual capabilities.
And back then there was no such thing as really doing a lot of punch-ins. You got there as your band, you either could play good together or you couldn't. And fortunately for us, that band we were pretty tight.
So I don't see that as a handicap, as far as recording in the 60s. I see it as you had to have the goods. And if you had the goods, you made a great recording, and if you didn't, you were what you were. And I think that kept things very real, and I like that aspect of it. Nowadays, nothing's real, and anybody can go in and make a recording and sound like a genius, when really live, if you just said, perform for me, there's no computer technology to help you out. They couldn't do it. So I don't see it as a deficiency or anything like that. I just think it really kept things real, and I appreciate the way it was then. The very first session that my band, the Jets, did at Golden Voice, there were 4 or 5 songs, and we never had a record made out of any of it, unfortunately. That actually was the 3rd session that produced our first 45 in 1973.
Big schemes and broken dreams occur every day. Politics and stupid tricks just get in my way. B for me, C for me, please understand.
WIRL promoted it. The Jets had gone crazy and done things that no other band in the area had ever done as far as crowds and generating excitement. And they just fell in love with us and said, we will, if you guys can come up with a real recording and you want to make a record, we'll give the session a listen, and if we think it's worthy, we'll put it on the radio. So that's what we did, and they selected a couple of our songs and said, we think this can do it. And Be For Me, a song that I wrote, was one of those songs.
Mike Eisenberg was a songwriter, and Greg Clemens also wrote songs, but they were the oldest, and they were kind of the two that were the main guys, because the rest of us were just the kids, you know.
And WIRL promoted it the same way they promote a Beatles 45 or anybody else, and that song became a top 20 hit. Actually got to number 13 on WIRL's charts. So they were actually the ones promoting it, because the Jets never ever performed that song live. From that time in 1974, when it got that far in the charts, until this day, that song has been one of my biggest claims to fame, and it still has a huge effect on my life, my career. It was added to a box set of classic recordings, pop recordings from the Midwest, called Buttons from Champaign to Chicago, and it's on that box set, and it's given me a lot of notoriety and acclaim.
Like so many artists today, Mike Eisenberg and Graham Walker were no different when they heard the Jets' music playing on the radio for the first time. They both found the feeling simply indescribable. They appreciate the opportunity that they had back then even more when they compare it to modern digital technologies.
Boy, I'll tell you, my reaction to hearing Be For Me on the radio the first time, I don't even think I can describe it. It was like a dream come true. It was like, it was only a decade before that I first picked up a guitar, and I wanted to be like these other guys, anywhere from Suburban 9 to 5 to the Shags, clear on up to the Beatles. I wanted to be one of those guys that had a record on the radio, and it happened.
40 plus years later, some of the Jets' music from the 1960s will be heard for the first time. Plans are underway for a new release.
At this point in time, the exciting thing for us is we've got a hold of the masters, and we're going to be able to put a record out of all the songs that no one's heard that are actually quite good. And when this record comes out of some of the songs that we could salvage, people are going to go, wow, it sounds current. What we learned there from him served me as a recording artist years down the road.
Graham Walker joined his brother Brad, and they spent the next 30 years as the Elvis Brothers, touring the USA and abroad. Greg Clemens was well known for his performances as a mime while being a world-class musician. Mike Eisenberg continues today as a writer, producer, and highly creative artist.